it's such a therapeutic thing for me just because it was a way for me to express myself without feeling like I needed to rein it in or uh, be defensive about it. Because, I mean, my counselor, he said, okay, you can write this journal, but I don't have to read it. It can be just for you. You don't have to share anything with me if you don't want me to know about it.
Welcome back to the You Need a Counselor podcast. This is a show presented by Heart and Solutions Counseling Agency. We release new episodes every Sunday at 5 p.m. Central and encourage you to batch up that laundry, put away the dishes, plan for the week ahead, or do any other task that might seem daunting while you give our show a listen. You might just be encouraged to call your therapist, connect with this week's guest, or seek out those services you've been considering for a while but haven't made the commitment to yet. If you are in the state of Iowa and are in need of mental or behavioral health counseling, give us a call at 1-800-531-4236. Enjoy the show.
Hello and welcome back to the You Need a Counselor podcast. My name is Dr. Julie Johnson. I'm the president and founder here at Heart and Solutions Mental Health and Behavioral Health Counseling in Iowa.
And I'm Chrissa Hunt. I am our vice president in charge of the BHIS Behavioral Health Department. And this is our podcast, You Need a Counselor. So we are designed for people curious about counseling, but have barriers keeping them from experiencing the benefits of counseling. Our mission is to share stories about counseling, good, bad, and indifferent, and spread the message that everyone can benefit from mental health and behavioral health counseling services.
Our guest today is Abby McIntire. She is our administrative assistant here at Heart and Solutions. And Abby has a background as a special education teacher in a middle school and also in a state training school for boys. So coming into this role, Abby had that education in special education, in English and teaching, and helping children and students with some specific challenges that they may have had. So welcome, Abby. Thank you so much for being here today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So tell us a little bit about your role here at Heart and Solutions in the administrative department.
Yeah, so I'm kind of the gatekeeper for any clients that want to get started with services, whether that be counseling for individual therapy, couples therapy, family therapy, or also our behavioral health intervention services or BHIS. Basically, my role here is if anybody wants to start services with us, I help them get started, fill out the necessary paperwork, and basically get them assigned to an appropriate provider for them. And on top of that, I also work with current clients for any needs that they may have, whether that's billing or any administrative type things, such as updating information on their files.
You probably have to do a lot of conflict resolution with people that call in, not only calling in frustrations about billing or trying to get started with services. Can you kind of explain how you deal with that with clients calling in with frustrations?
Yeah. So a lot of times I try to make sure that I do hear the client as to what's wrong, what are they experiencing. I do try to empathize with them in that struggle and try and work out the best route for both them and our agency so that their needs are met, but also we're keeping our standards and our procedures in place so then everybody has a fair chance to whatever's happening.
Absolutely. And so you worked as a special educator previously to this job. How would you say that the skills and the education that you have in your background have impacted the job that you're doing now?
I definitely think having the education of child development and kind of some different challenges with children with disabilities. A lot of the times when I do see new clients or parents of clients that want to get started, that they might have some of these same type of struggles or different conflicts that they're seeing come up with their children. I think for me, it's been very beneficial for me to see that and kind of understand the background where some of that might stem. And I think kind of helps me decide, okay, well, what service is best fit for this person or this child? and get them assigned to the appropriate provider that may have a specific specialty in that area, or they provide a specific service that I think would benefit them the most.
Yeah, and you kind of have that perspective too, as like you said, you're kind of the gatekeeper of services. So if people want to get started, they have to kind of go through you first. Somebody who's listening, whether it's in Iowa or anywhere in the world, if they want to get started with services, what are some things that you might tell them to like expect when they first like call into an agency or want to get started with services?
Yeah, so specifically for our agency, I mean, they are free to call our 1-800 number. The admin extension is our main one. And we are there basically to answer any questions they have. So some things that we might ask them is, okay, where are you located? Just because for our agency, we have, I believe, 6 different office locations. And we also have multiple smaller locations in Iowa for BHIS services. So we like to make sure that we do have a provider in their area that is available for whatever specific service they might be asking. Another thing is what kind of insurance they would have, just so that we know, okay, we are in network with your insurance. So then you're not having to, say, pay out of pocket for a service when, you may or may not have insurance. And if, say, they did want to start services with us, we do have a provider available and we are in network with their insurance. What admin basically does is help them and direct them towards our intake packet, which is on our website. Basically, that full form is getting all the necessary information we need about that client or the guardians of the client, filling out any necessary forms. So say a consent for treatment form and any releases of information we need. And then from there, we would receive that and admin processes that and sends it out to the appropriate providers and supervisors for that service.
What would you say is your favorite thing about being that person, that first person that clients would talk to, maybe if they do call in?
I like the fact that, especially if people do call in and ask about services, I enjoy the getting to know them, even if it's only for like a short 2-minute conversation on the phone, getting to know, okay, why are they looking for services? What are some struggles? So then I can get them to a provider that I think is the best fit. Because for admin, we have to know exactly who's here, what specialties they have, what areas of expertise they have. So getting to know these different people that want to become clients with us, I think that connection piece is really something that I thrive with, because I love people and I want to help people in any way I can. So I try to make it a point that when there is a new client that comes in and they're wanting a specific service for a specific reason, I have the ability to tell them, hey, I do have somebody that can help you with that. Let me help you get to start services with them.
Absolutely. You kind of have to know literally everyone that works here and what we
Yes.
specialize in. I'm kind of curious what led the career shift. So you were working at this school as a special educator and then also the state training school. What shifted where now you're working more with the administrative side?
So my biggest reason for it was at the time, my last position, I was a middle school special ed teacher, and I was really enjoying it. It was probably one of the places I thought I was going to last for a while. But at the beginning of the school year, I actually found out I was pregnant, and kind of going into it and having just some of these experiences of, okay, there's a lot that goes into special education. There's a lot of paperwork, a lot of extra meetings outside of school time, as well as lesson planning. It was starting to become a common thing for me to go in early and then stay late and not be compensated for it as much as I felt I should. So I want to take a bit of a step back from that teaching and that special ed role while we were starting a new family. And I do love, helping people, but I also do like that, monotonous, in a sense, the 9 to 5 type work where okay, I can come in, I can help and do my job as much as I can, and then I can go home and I can be with my family. Because I was worried at the time that, okay, I'm going to be spending so much time at the school with other children and with families that I'm not going to be able to spend time with my family. So that was kind of what led me into this position and this role. And what really struck me and what really made me want to stay at Heart and Solutions is, well, it's helping people. And that's really the core of my being is I want to help people, and especially for children, working with children in the school setting, especially special ed. It takes a lot of heart to go and try to help them as much as I can. So I wanted to continue that in where I was going to be working outside of the school.
Absolutely. I love that. And actually both of our administrative team out there used to work in the school settings, our other administrator. And so I think it really does take that desire to help children, that desire to be a support for children, to understand them, to provide them that empathy and provide them that help and assistance and structure. But at the same time, being able to take care of ourselves and being able to say, no, my family is the most important thing in my life. And it has to be, it should be. And so making a decision like that, very difficult decision, but being able to say, no, the things that I do love about helping children, you need to be able to do that still because it does fulfill me, but I need to do that in a way where there is structure that can allow me to be able to take care of myself and my family outside of work. So I think that's so beautiful, such beautiful self-recognition of like, okay, I know myself, I got a giant heart. I'm going to be at that school nonstop because there's no limit to what we can do to help a child. Like there's no limit to that. And so, especially when we're good at it, we enjoy it, we're going to keep doing those things, even outside of it, even when it costs time from our families or from our own children. So I just love that self-awareness. I think it is so beautiful. And I do think it really helps our administrative team to have that background and to have that experience working with children and working in schools, because it really does give that ability to empathize with so many different situations coming in. Yeah, I think it's beautiful. So now you have had some counseling experience as well for yourself. And I love when we have team members from Heart and Solutions on the show. And almost every time they're like, heck yeah, I go to counseling, right? Or I have gone to counseling. And because it's so important that we all kind of have that we believe in the service that we're providing. So can you tell us a little bit about your own counseling experience?
Yeah, of course. So I've had a couple different providers, and granted, it's been a while since I have gone to counseling or seen my counselor. My earliest experience with the counselor was actually in the midst of my parents' divorce back when I was in middle school. So it was kind of a, confusing time. My parents wanted me to see somebody in case I had any underlying feelings of what was happening in their relationship. And for me, it was kind of a therapeutic thing. I was kind of processing through this change in my life because it was such a big change. We lived together on an acreage, and then suddenly, oh, now we're separating. There's new family, and I have to move somewhere else with my mother. So for me, for that experience, I think it was good for me to process through, here's what's happening. This is not your fault, because that's what my parents worried a lot was, okay, we don't want her to think that our divorce, our relationship separating is her fault. So I think for me in that experience, it was very therapeutic for me to kind of work through and process what happened, how does that affect me, what is going to change for me, and what's going to stay the same. My other experience with counseling was when I was a little bit older. I was in college, actually. I was at UNI, and I think it was my second year of college, so back in 2015 or 16. Um, and at the time, I was living in the dorms, and it was starting to get kind of stressful, especially with school. At the time, I was still deciding at that time what I really wanted to do with my life. I initially started out with an idea to be a biology major. That didn't pan out very well. Um, but I was going through these classes and really kind of trying to find myself. And at that same time, we had a little bit of family conflict as to my father and just my step siblings and half siblings and stepmother at that time. So it was, for me, just a very stressful time from both family side and also just from my school and education side. And I was starting to kind of sink into this like rut of, okay, I feel like I'm going nowhere. I feel like I can't do anything. And I was starting to kind of get depressed and not really want to go to classes or go to work or hang out with friends. So one of my friends actually suggested going to the UNI Health Center where they do have counselors there. So I started going to see a counselor there, and it was very eye-opening. It, for me, initially I was kind of unsure as to whether I wanted to open up and really tell him about, these experiences, these thoughts, things like that. But I think for me, it was learning to cope with some of the stuff that was in my life at that time, because there were so many issues and so many parts to it that it really it made me feel so much more in control.
I absolutely love that. In situations in our lives that we feel like we don't have control, and there are so many of them that come up in our lives over the course of our lives. Anytime we have a loss of any form, and that could be a positive situation, like, oh, I'm choosing a different career, right? Or I'm choosing a different path through college. Or it can be things in our relationships that we cannot control, and we can feel so powerless through those shifts, those natural shifts in our lives. And I think for some of us, we kind of have a natural tendency, right? There is a spectrum of like, I feel like I am very empowered, right? I control my destiny. We're all on one side. That's my daughter. She is like right on that side of it. And then for some of us, we are born, we grow up, and we're kind of on that other side of things where it feels like, okay, my natural tendency is like, I feel powerless over a lot of things in my life. And so being able, there are challenges on both sides for sure. And so being able to process through some of that stuff, to see some of those situations that we feel like, no, I have no control over what's happening, and I don't like it. I don't like the thing that's happening, and I don't like that I don't have any control over it. And being able to see that through a different perspective and trying on these different lenses of, yeah, what do I have control over? There has to be something in every situation, and we can train ourselves to focus on that. We can bring ourselves a little closer to that middle of like, yeah, there are a lot of things I have no control over, and there are so many things I do have control over, right? I love the one of like, point to my nose, and everything behind it I can control, and everything in front of it I can't. I have no control. So I just love that spectrum and that outcome for you. Like, yeah, I feel like, yeah, this is maybe always going to be kind of my natural tendency. Like, that's going to be like my instinctual, that's where I go. But now I've got these skills to be able to go, okay, let me try on some different perspectives, right? Let me try on some different ways of thinking about it, some different ways of going about it, and I can bring myself a little closer to that middle. People like my daughter, who their natural instinct is like, hit it with a hammer until it's the way I want it, right? Um, she has to develop different skills, right, to bring herself closer to that middle equilibrium of like, you gotta look at some things and accept that I don't have control over, what mommy does about this or thinks about this or decides about this. I don't have control over if the cats will dance for me when I give them a treat, right? There are the things that we can control and that we can't. So I love that so much. And it sounds like they were two very different counseling experiences because you were in such different places in your life. So in elementary school, being able to go and go like, yeah, I mean, it sounds like your parents were so proactive in getting you in there, and that is amazing to me, because that focus on, we got to make sure Abby feels supported. Like, we got to make sure that she has an outlet for these changes, because that a divorce, or it could be like, hey, we're moving houses, or hey, we're moving towns, or like, hey, we are we've lost somebody to the prison system, right? So all of these changes that happen in our lives, that proactive piece is so important. And then in college, you were like, I'm going to try this for me, and it sounds like you had just such a different experience there as well. Yeah, I love that. What were some of the coping skills and strategies or different perspectives that you took out of there?
I have to think back a little bit. I do remember, because for me at that time, it was a lot of like, I would almost get to the point of panicking because I was getting so overwhelmed with what was happening, and oh my gosh, I can't control this, and things like that. So for one of them, I do remember, and I still use this today. And I don't remember what the exact name is, but it goes with your five senses. So say 5 things you can touch, 4 things you can see, 3 things you can smell, 2 things you can taste, 1 thing you can hear, or something along those lines. I can't remember what the numbers were, but I still do use this today as to, if I am getting overwhelmed and I feel like whatever is happening is not in my control, that is something that I can slow myself down and use to say, okay, I can look around, I can feel my settings, I can ground myself back and kind of take a step back, relook at the situation, and then process and go from there. As to, I am in a fight or flight mode, I have no idea where I'm going, this could end badly kind of situation. The other thing that I do remember, one technique was just even breathing exercises. And those are still something that periodically I do use. And I, to be honest, have been trying to use them with my 1-year-old. Doesn't understand it, but I still try to use it, sometimes for me, sometimes for him, but sometimes for mom. Whereas when you're feeling big feelings and you don't know how to process them, sometimes just taking that step back, taking deep breath in through your nose, holding it for a couple seconds, then out through your mouth, and just letting it release some of that tension, some of that, whether anger, sadness, or any other big emotion. For me, that's just been another part that has stuck with me that, I learned from my counselor, and I'm trying to pass on to my child too, and still use myself.
Yeah, I mean, like Julie mentioned too, it sounds like your parents are very open to counseling and getting you in it right away. And then I think a lot of our episodes lately have been with people where one of their first counseling experiences was like their university counselor, and like being able to have that like ready resource there at school. Do you think that kind of like both your parents getting you into counseling as well as like having it available at school helped you get more into counseling? Were you hesitant at all to try it again when you were in college, or was that more helpful since you've had that past experience?
I think it was helpful, because they were very open about, we want to make sure that you're not bottling things up, when it came to that beginning counseling session when they were going through the divorce. So for me, it was kind of an automatic thinking of, okay, counseling, you you have to open up because it's not healthy to bottle things up, bottle feelings up. So I was still hesitant, I will say, when I was in college for starting therapy. But at that time, I did have a friend that they were going to counseling at the same UNI health center. And they said, no, even if you just try it for a couple times and just at least talk to them, explain what's happening in your life, and maybe that will make you feel better, at least getting it off your chest to somebody. And from there, I kind of went with it, said, okay, well, if you're okay with it, and I had a good experience last time, maybe this time will be the same or even better. And from there, I mean, I think it was very beneficial to, have those experiences and be willing to try it.
Absolutely. And I love those techniques that you brought up. I'm going to send you a water bottle from the merch store because we've got one that has the breathing square, and it's kind of outlined on the water bottle. And we've got one that has the five senses, five things you can see and four things that you can smell. So Marta will link those also for the merch store, because those are such powerful tools. And I think that sometimes when people hear breathing techniques or they hear, like these kinds of strategies, they either go like, oh, that's a lot of work to do, right? Like I'm needing something to ground me. I'm not in a place to like think to do that stuff. Or sometimes people will be like, oh no, that won't work for me. And so what I love about your example is that, yeah, these are things that you still are able to do and that you're able to do in the moment, and to go, oh, okay, I'm getting overwhelmed. Like I'm feeling this feeling. It's not a very comfortable feeling. And so these are the things I'm going to do right now for myself. And I think it's just such a great example because you're a person who you have, through your career since graduation, you've done a lot of very stressful jobs. You've worked in a lot of very important but very challenging roles. And so, you are such a great example of needing to have those tools and utilizing them in your day-to-day life so that you can help other people. I just think it's beautiful. Yeah. And so you were looking for ways to manage stress, and then you were also looking at ways to express yourself and express your feelings. I know you mentioned like you weren't always comfortable doing that. So how did that kind of evolve for you through your journey?
When it came to the expressing feelings, at the time that I had started counseling at UNI, I was slowly transitioning into, going into English courses because I did like English. I have since I was young, and I liked writing a lot. So my counselor actually suggested doing a journal, and I actually had quite a few writing classes that they made us journal anyway for any reason. Sometimes there was a prompt, sometimes it was just free writing. And so that really kind of spanned into this is a way for me to express myself in a very healthy way and get out my thoughts, my feelings, my experiences onto paper. And then I can always look back and read through them and see, okay, what are some things that I'm really struggling with? What are some things that I might need to work on or process through? And I still write, not as much as I used to. I probably should make more time for it, but it's such a therapeutic thing for me just because it was a way for me to express myself without feeling like I needed to rein it in or be defensive about it. Because, I mean, my counselor, he said, okay, you can write this journal, but I don't have to read it. It can be just for you. You don't have to share anything with me if you don't want me to know about it. And sometimes I would share some things with him from it, but other times that was just for me. That was something that I was going to keep for myself. And that was my way of expressing myself and getting thoughts on paper, basically.
Yeah, and I heard you say when you first started in college and when you were going to the counselor, your initial degree you were thinking of doing was biology, and obviously that transitioned. And I know you mentioned journaling then. So do you think that kind of helped going to counseling and starting journaling, realize like biology is not what I want to do? Or how was that process of like switching your major?
Yes, I think that definitely was a key factor in it because at the time, some of the classes I was taking for biology, they were very stressful. I felt like I was behind. And so a lot of what I was talking about with my counselor or writing down in my journal was about all of these classes and how I felt like I wasn't getting anywhere. I felt like this wasn't for me. And that's kind of when I talked with my counselor and we talked about how I really enjoy writing. I really enjoy just English and reading. And he was kind of the one that suggested, well, have you thought about a different, degree? Have you thought about maybe going into English or something related to it? And that's kind of when I started transitioning in my mind of, okay, I don't have to stick with biology. This is not a dead set, you have to stick out this major. And that's when I started taking, okay, different classes, whether that was, English literature or writing and kind of some of the more teaching related ones. And I kind of started to realize, okay, this is something that I really enjoy. This is something I could make a career out of when it came to teaching these types of things, because I had great teachers in elementary, middle school, high school, specifically for English, and I loved that subject. So I think when I talked it through with my counselor and we decided maybe biology is not for me, let's try something else. I do think that it helped kind of push me in a direction that I didn't want to go into. I just didn't really know it. That's for me, I just expected to stay with my original major. And now thinking back to it, I've talked with so many people that they're like, oh yeah, I didn't stay with my original major. I switched it 3 times. But for me at that time, I felt like that was what I had to do. I felt like I had to stick it through and didn't realize that, oh, I can change what I want to do. I am in control of that piece of my life. I can do something that I want to continue on as a career and not stress myself out over just the classes, let alone, the actual career part of it when I got to there. So yeah, I do definitely think it helped a lot.
I love that. I love the journaling example because it again was giving that, or it was you going, I'm gonna take my power here. I get to decide what I write, and I get to decide who I share it with, including nobody. Or yeah, I want to share this piece with this person, right? Or I want to process this with this person. And so having that power back again, going like, no, I'm in control. I get to decide what happens with this. And in it's such an empowering story. And then I also love your story and your journey through changing your major, because man, we get that a lot on this show, I gotta say. And especially recently, and I thought I was going to be an attorney. That was always it was like vet or attorney, and that is gross. So I'm going to be an attorney. And I did my undergrad in criminal justice and did not like it, just didn't enjoy it. And so I remember, one of the only things I remember about learning in college in that criminal justice degree, though, was I took a psychology class, and that teacher was like, literally everything is a choice that you do. Like, get out of bed in the morning is a choice. Walk outside with shoes on is a choice. Like, go to class or fly to Paris is a choice. And there are things that we say to ourselves, like, no, I have to go to class, otherwise I won't pass this class. Well, yeah, but you still have the choice to not pass the class and don't go in. and go to Paris. And then our mind says to us, well, I don't have money to go to Paris, right? I'm not prepared. I don't have whatever. And the thing is, well, there's still the choice to do that. You could steal the money and go to Paris today, right? You could. Well, then I would go to jail. Well, yeah, you would. You'd go to jail, but you could do it, right? And so well, I could do all of those things. That always sticks with me because that helped me through changing my major and going like, well, I got a criminal justice degree I will never ever use. All right. And so going through that process, and it helps me too with those I have to's, like I have to do this or that because I get so resentful being told what to do. And that's a problem for me. Like I get resentful about it. I don't like that about my initial reaction to it. So I have to be so intentional to be like, no, I don't have to do the thing that I'm telling myself I have to do and making myself resentful over it. I don't have to. I can blow off that meeting. I can blow off that, right? I can not make dinner for my family. I can do whatever it is that I want, but I don't like the outcome, right? That would happen with that. So I'm deciding, nope, I'm going to do this thing. I'm going to, make dinner for my family because I don't like the outcome that otherwise, like my husband, well, you guys know my husband, he's not going to, he's going to be like, oh, good, it's PC's pizza night, right? I don't like that. So I'm gonna make dinner for my family because I don't like the outcome that I know is gonna happen, right? If I don't. So I think that's just such a great your story is such a great story of I'm finding that I don't have to do anything. I can change careers and go from doing special education into administration and still help people and still be in alignment with my values and what I want for my family, the outcomes that I want. I mean, it's just beautiful. Yeah. So when you are working with people who call in who want to know more about counseling or who want to know more about counseling or services for their children, what are some of the challenges that you find that people have? Whether it's stigma of counseling or other barriers that kind of keep people from diving in and starting that counseling process.
Sometimes it can be, especially if it's a minor client, sometimes even parental involvement. They want what's best for the child, but they don't always want to follow through with some services, whether that's might have a different reason for, oh, our family doesn't do that, or that's not part of what we believe. Other challenges might be very real world ones where their insurance doesn't align with ones that we're in network with. And that can be very hard for not just the client and their family, but also just for admin as to, we want to help them, but sometimes there are just barriers that we cannot change, we cannot move. So we try as much as we can to, provide different options, whether there's different county funding services or other outside funding services that we can tell them about and try and recommend to them, because we want them to get these services, especially if they are willing to go through the effort of applying for them and start them and continue them. We want to make sure that they're getting as much help as they can, and they're not being burdened with that you are paying so much for this service that should be basically free for you. Because I mean, it really is important to talk and, kind of get those feelings and other conflicts under control and be able to work through different life events. So we do deal with some conflicts and boundaries when it comes to getting new clients in. And I mean, those are the main few that we see, but there are other ones, such as, say you might have a client that they want to start services, but their insurance is through their parents and they are estranged from their parents. So, I mean, there's just multiple layers of boundaries that, I mean, we try as best we can to help them out, because we want to help as many people as we can. We want to get people services. But sometimes it is hard to start and hard to continue, especially if you don't always have support from family or friends that, oh, why are you getting counseling? Why do you have therapy? You don't need that. Because there can be a lot of negativity into it and there can be stigma around it. So we do experience some of that when we get new clients in, but we try as best we can to help them as much as we can.
Yeah. What are some ways where, if that does happen, or people call in with those like stigma issues or parents don't want to participate, especially with the younger kids too? I think we see that where like the parents sign their kid up, but don't actually want to follow through with the assessment or getting started with services. So what are some ways that you guys can help support them or do support them with getting started with services? I know you mentioned like obviously funding resources, but what about with that stigma?
So for me personally, I try to empathize and kind of understand where is this coming from, whether the parent doesn't want to be involved or they assumed, okay, we're going to start this service and I have no part of it. I feel like for me, I try to kind of explain to them, it takes a village to raise a child or to help a child. So it's not just coming from an outside person, because yes, they can see a BHIS counselor twice a week, every week for 5 months, but if they're not able to, you know, how do I want to say it? If they're not able to practice these types of things, practice these skills that they're working with their BHIS counselor at home with the people that they're living with, their parents, their guardians, their siblings, it's not going to stick. It's not going to be beneficial in the long run. Yes, it's going to be a quick fix and a band-aid over what the child's behavior might be, but that's not going to be a long-term outcome because parents and children, it is a family unit that you need to have everyone involved in this practice because we want the best for this child, but we need to make sure that we're doing as much as we can, they're doing as much as they can, and then the child is getting that benefit from everyone involved.
It does take a village. It really does. Even as you were describing, your experiences growing up and your interest in English, the English language and storytelling and reading and writing, you brought up, I had great teachers that supported me in that and fostered that skill and that love for writing and reading. So it really does make all the difference that those adults that care and those adults that are supports and are fostering those pieces, and it can't, a counselor is a great one to add to our village, but a counselor cannot be our village, and so I love that distinction. And I also think that your story and what you've shared with us really highlights the importance for people of, if you are a college student and you've got counseling services available to you for that, go utilize that. Go try that, because after you graduate and you have employment and you have a job, right, or you might be on your parents' insurance and all of these kind of complications that can sometimes arise. And if you've had that counseling experience previously and and you've gained from that, either, oh, I did not like this about that counselor that I saw, right? So I'm looking for this. Or, oh, I really loved this aspect of what this counselor in college helped me with. And so I know, okay, that's the kind of support that I'm looking for. It can make going through those challenges, right? Even applying for a county funding, there's a lot of thought work that has to go into that. But if I know, okay, but I know what I'm looking for, I know what outcome I am working towards to combat these challenges, we're gonna be in a better place to do that as an adult versus if this is my first time ever even trying counseling or talking to a counselor, those challenges might be even more daunting because I don't have that end result in mind. I don't have that self-knowledge of like, this is what I need from this counselor. This is what I'm looking to achieve. So I think, really highlights how important those college services are. And if you've got them available to you, to use them, at least, even if you don't have a great counseling experience with it, you are going to gain that self-knowledge to move forward. And if you have had a great counseling experience like Abby did, you also gain that self-knowledge for moving forward. So I think that's great. And also, if your employer has an IE or an EAP, an employee assistance program that offers free counseling for you, I think those challenges that can happen when we don't have those really highlights like how important it is to utilize them if you do have them available to you. If your employer will pay for some counseling sessions for you through that EAP. Because once we don't have that option, right, it can become even more challenging to get into services going forward. So I think it just really highlights the importance of that. Wonderful. So Abby, what suggestion might you give to somebody who might be on the fence about starting counseling? Suggestion could you give?
I think for me personally, thinking back to, my different experiences, and I had positive experiences myself, but not everybody does. And I know I have to take that into account when I'm talking with people that want to start and they've maybe had negative experiences in the past with a counselor. So I'd say for my suggestion, if you are thinking about counseling, but you're on the fence, even just not just taking the leap, but just dipping a toe in, calling, whether that's saying, hey, I'm kind of interested. What services can you provide? What things can I maybe get from you? Just to start that role of, okay, you're taking control of what you want to do with your mental health. You don't have to go right in and dive in and say, yep, I'm going to do it. I'm going to get this done. I have this goal in mind, and we're going to do this in a year or two. You don't have to have the big picture down. You just have to take that initial little step into, okay, I've been thinking about it. What are some of the things that I can maybe look into or get started with that might help me in my mental health journey? Because I think we have it in our merch store, but it's a graphic that says progress isn't linear. It's not going straight up. It is all over the place. Sometimes you're dipping down. Sometimes you're in really highs, really lows. It's never linear as to, yes, my progress is going like this. I'm doing great. I see the end goal. Because sometimes that end goal might change and it might morph according to what you're dealing with, what things you're having to work in. So for me, just taking that first initial little step into it, I think is probably the best thing I can suggest to anybody that wants to possibly start counseling. Even if that's just calling admin saying, hey, I heard this podcast. I'm kind of thinking about therapy. What do you think? And from there we can help you however we can.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for being here, Abby. And if you want to give our admin a call and say hey to Abby, you can reach her at our Heart and Solutions 800 number, like she said, and that's 1-800-531-4236. And you can push 0 and Abby or Pam, one of our other admin, will answer. And they can help you get started with services here in the state of Iowa or refer you to other areas as well.
I'm Abby McIntire, and I'm the counselor.
Awesome.
Awesome.
And I'm Chrissa Hunt.
And I'm Julie Johnson, and we need a counselor.
And so do you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the You Need a Counselor podcast. We are so grateful that you're here. Now, we want to hear from you. Text us or give us a call at 515-650-3231. You can also find and connect with You Need a Counselor on Facebook and Instagram. If you've enjoyed today's show, please take a moment to like, review, or leave a comment, as all of these things help others to find and benefit from the podcast as well. If you're in the state of Iowa and interested in mental health counseling or behavioral health intervention services, give us a call at 800-531-4236.